Hello, and welcome to 10 Lessons Learned, where we talk to leaders and luminaries from all over the world to dispense wisdom for career, business, and life in order to make the world wiser lesson by lesson. My name is Diana White, and I'm your host for this episode. Our guest today is Dr. Conan Higgins. Dr. Higgins is an international business attorney, crisis leadership consultant, and Amazon #1 best-selling author who has spent his career operating where most people only theorize. Welcome, Dr. Higgins. It's very good to have you on the show.
Very much. I appreciate you having me.
Well, listen, this career is illustrious, to say the least. I'm reading, right? I'm reading through your bio, and I'm picking out a couple of things because they're striking out to me. Conan served as a joint terminal attack controller with the U.S. Air Force Special Operations, including parachuting into enemy-held territory in Iraq and earning 2 Bronze Stars for Valor. Talk to me about all of that.
There are some with, I'm sure, far more illustrious stories that would be more engaging, but the Tactical Air Control Party is an element of Air Force Special Warfare. The Joint Terminal Attack Controller is a specialty within that, where people are essentially that. They are. It's called joint because it's just joint environment, right? The Army, the Air Force, the Marines, the Navy, we all work together when we go to war. The terminal attack is, for those who don't know, it's when the munition, whether it's a missile, a bomb, artillery, is actually about to hit the target. And so the control is, God willing, I'm doing it properly and it's hitting the enemy, not us. So you've been taken together. I spent 25 years total in the Air Force, both active duty and the Guard, but was on the ground with maneuver elements, whether that was in special operations or sometimes with a conventional Army unit. And I was calling in aircraft to prosecute targets, or artillery, or any number of things like that, helicopter gunships, in support of that ground commander's scheme of maneuver. Is that militaristic enough for you?
That is more than militaristic enough for me. And then after doing all this service and putting your life on the line, then you shifted and did the ultimate challenge. Talk to me about that academic journey, your academic career, because that's phenomenal as well.
I have to kind of back up to move forward. So when I left active duty and joined the Air Guard, I had to get a day job, and that day job was as a state trooper in Washington State. I did that for a number of years and then moved over to the city of Lakewood, where I was an undercover detective and a member of the Lakewood SWAT team, but a team leader of the Pierce County Metro SWAT team. And it was on one of those call-outs. If you've ever spent any time up in the Puget Sound region, it only rains from early September to late August. And this was one of those times when that was a joke. It was about 38 degrees. We were standing in the rain for about 4 hours. And I just realized that, I don't want to do this when I'm 40 years old. So I got home and following up on a conversation I'd had with my folks, I called my mom and said, yeah, Ma, I'm going to go to law school. And so I did, but I was juggling the career, the Air Guard, constant deployments. I was married with 2 young kids. I mean, anyone who has any one of those things knows that it can be a handful. And I was, selfishly trying to do it all. But I did finish law school. I did have to study abroad. I took my books and essentially studied by correspondence. I have a picture somewhere of me studying federal tax law under a poncho with a red lens flashlight up in the Korengal. And the Korengal may strike some folks as familiar. They've seen that area in the movie Lone Survivor, where it talked about Marcus Luttrell and his team, and it's not exactly friendly territory. But I did it, and I graduated, and within a year of finishing law school, I was back in school at the University of Liverpool in England to get an advanced legal degree. And the reason for that is because I'm a later-in-life lawyer, and I felt that I needed to do something to jumpstart my career. People would look at me as being older and just automatically expect a certain level of competence and experience. and I didn't have that. So by getting the advanced legal degree, I would at least have more knowledge, if not experience. And going to the University of Liverpool made sense to me for a couple of reasons. One, it's a very prestigious school. Two, it's an international degree from a non-U.S. school, and having that credential really helped me out as I then began to work in Africa and the Middle East, and the British legal system holds some cachet there. It gives me some credibility instantly just by reason of having that degree. Without going too far in depth in that, I came back to the U.S. to help some of my buddies from the military run a coffee company called Black Rifle Coffee Company, if you've ever heard of that. And by their own admission, they were a marketing company that happened to sell coffee. And so many hilarious, some very over the top videos that were circulated, but it all helped to promote a product that they quickly found themselves unable to control. And by their own admission, they didn't know what they were doing at the beginning. And so they brought a few of us on to help out with that. And I helped with all the processes and procedures that go into turning a great idea into a great company. And eventually they did go public. And so that was great. What they did for me as a bonus one year was to send me to Harvard to be certified as a mediator and a negotiation master through the Harvard program on negotiation, which is a program that combines both the business school and the law school to kind of get the best of both, right? Good negotiations have to be legally sound, but they also have to have, some sound business acumen as well. Later, I did decide that, geez, that wasn't enough. And I completed a PhD in international law and treaty law. It's interesting to note that I had submitted my dissertation for really kind of a rough draft overview. What do you think, to my advisors? And they were not favorably impressed. And so I was a little bit despondent. And while I was sitting there kind of pouting, I said, well, I'm going to take a break. I'll come back in a bit with some fresh eyes and I'll get back to work on it. And it was in that interim that I started writing the book, The Maverick's Blueprint, which is the book that you mentioned, did go to number one in 4 categories on Amazon, and 4 business categories. But all of that and a couple dollars will get you a cup of coffee at 7-Eleven, I think. So that's where we are.
Well, I would just say, viewers and listeners, I think that we should have a separate dictionary where you do have the picture of what you think this definition is. And if we could do that, if we had determination, Dr. Higgins, your picture would be right there in that dictionary for determination. That is an amazing journey and story. So many different areas you could have just said, okay, this is good enough. And it wasn't good enough. And I'm so glad it wasn't, because we wouldn't have you where you are now. We wouldn't have the book. We wouldn't have your other series that we haven't talked about yet that shows your softer side. So
That's true.
I'm so thrilled. So now, all of this that you've gone through, looking back now, what would you tell your 30-year-old self?
Oh, stop and enjoy it a little more. 30 years ago was, you kindly joked that it was 6 months ago. And in some ways it does feel like that. But in others, the reality of just a hard physical life does take its toll. There's aches and pains, but, there are also some things that could I have known ahead of time that this was coming up, I might have planned a little more time to stop and smell the roses, if you will. My dad wrote me a letter as he was on his deathbed. And one of the things that he said at the ending, he said, when you have all the champagne that you can drink and all the steak that you can eat, stop and enjoy it. And I would tell 30-year-old me, hey, even if it's a hamburger, go eat it someplace that makes you relax and enjoy it a little better. So that's kind of the one big thing, because I wouldn't want to give too much away, because it's been an adventure. And I do say that life is too short to live a boring one. So I wouldn't want to prep myself to be expecting things, because when they took me by surprise, that's really what formed the basis for my book, how I dealt with it.
That is an amazing outlook on life. One of the best answers to the what would I tell my 30-year-old self that I feel like we've had on this show. So thank you for that. And
Thank
we're going
you.
to go right on into lesson number 1. And these lessons are pretty cool because they're kind of cryptic and I love it. So lesson 1, the signal was always there. We've got Disclosure Day out right now. Mixed reviews on that, but it gave me the chills with that. Record signal. So tell me about this lesson.
Oh, think about any movie where an asteroid hits the Earth and it's an extinction level event. They knew it was coming, right? We're on a planet flying through space. There are other things flying through space, and presumably they know about it before it becomes a real problem. That's no different in business. There are very few really surprising crises that happen. And the leaders who miss them they're optimizing for the day they are in, not the day they're heading toward. So having a plan, preparing for the worst, hoping for the best, however you want to phrase that. A lot of times people don't want to spend the time, effort, or energy to prepare for the worst, right? Because with limited time, resources, people, money, etc., they're going to do as much as they can today, and we'll worry about tomorrow. I think the saying goes that today has enough to worry about. Why borrow from tomorrow?
Very true. Very true. It's always fascinated me. I am in the entrepreneurial space as well, and I coach entrepreneurs. And I always see this, it's almost a codependent kind of relationship where you have people that are starting businesses that they know that this is a journey that may be difficult and there may be failures and successes, but they've been taught kind of by the ecosystem. But don't look at that stuff. Everything is roses, especially if an investor talks to you. Everything is roses. There's nothing wrong. Everything is going to be right. And so how do you take that duality of, oh, I'm the one sitting up at 3 o'clock in the morning knowing, what I'm up against. And, how do I differentiate myself from competitors? And how do I deal with this particular incident that may happen down the road? But in the morning, I have a meeting with my board, and I have to smile and act like there's nothing that could go wrong.
100%. And doing the right amount of work means also looking at when you have that meeting with the board and they start asking you the hard questions, rather than deflect or talk about something else, answer them directly. Yes, we missed our numbers. Yes, we are behind schedule. Yes, we are over budget, whatever the problem is. But then understand and be able to explain why. And also, how are you going to get well? How are you going to fix this? Or if you've already started, great. Start lining out what you're doing that's going to get the system back on track. I think that's important. And I don't think that that's something that people necessarily are trained to do. I think that a lot of times business schools teach problem solving as though you have a building on fire, you drive up in your shiny fire truck, you hook the hose up, and to use the fireman's vernacular, you put the wet in the red until it goes out, you get in your truck and you go home. But the reality is a lot of us find ourselves in the position of leadership because somebody quit, got fired, God forbid there was a medical emergency or whatever the problem is. You're now the person in charge and you're on the second floor and the building's fully engulfed and they're storing propane, right by the emergency exit. So good luck, right? That's I think the problem that a lot of people don't expect is when they get put into a position that's not favorable. And those business school lessons are designed in a perfect world, assuming, set amount of resources and a set amount of time. And while that's somewhat true, you do have a set amount of resources. You do have a set amount of time. It's usually not favorable when everything's in flames around you.
It is so true. Now, lesson number 2, I love this one because we hear so many anecdotes about planning. Plan right and measure twice, cut once, all those things. Here, lesson 2 is the plan dies on first contact. The framework survives. Dig into that one for me.
Gladly. I think that it's aspirational when leaders or people say that, rather gleefully that, hey, we're going to rise to the occasion. And that's not true, right? They fall to the level of their preparation. They fall to the training of their team. And if you try to memorize a checklist in a vacuum, so to speak, It's real easy to freeze when reality doesn't match it, right? But if you internalize a framework, then you can more readily adapt under pressure. If you know what right is supposed to look like, you can pretty quickly pick out what's not right. And also, if you know your job, if you know your people, and you know the goal that everybody's working towards, you can better understand how you're off track, and get back on track. Think of it, you're taking a long road trip and nothing looks familiar. Nothing looks like what you thought you were supposed to be passing. Your signposts that say you're supposed to turn left don't materialize. You might not be on the right track anymore. So if you go back to your directions that you hand wrote, none of it makes sense because none of it matters anymore. You're 30 minutes in the wrong direction. But if you understand that you should be heading west and you're heading north, that's the framework that I'm talking about. Understand the direction you're supposed to be going. Understand what right looks like. Understand what it looks like if you're off course, because you can then more quickly adapt and get back to it.
I want everyone to save what he just said in some kind of voice note so that you can play it over and over again, because that was pretty doggone powerful. Lesson number 3, and this is powerful too. This is going to be one of those episodes, everyone. Strap in. Lesson number 3. Calm is contagious. So is panic.
I think that's true. I think that panic and fear can spread faster than the flu, and everybody's feeling the pressure usually, unless they're unclear on what's going on around them, and that happens. Sometimes people, certainly in my line of work, have been asleep, and when we've been in combat. We have to sleep sometime. You can't stay awake for the entire thing always. And other times, whatever the case is, somebody's coming into it with a little less understanding or comprehension of not only what we're facing, but what we need to do. And so as a leader, being calm doesn't mean you're ignoring the problem. But if you notice, I've even slowed down the way I'm talking. I'm being very purposeful. I'm trying to bring the room down. Why? Because that resonates. People see that. They see you as the leader, not getting emotional, making fact-based decisions, inquiring from people what their read is. What are we supposed to be doing? Okay, then why aren't you doing it? Good, get to it. And I'll talk a little more about that piece in a second.
Okay, it makes sense. And I see we are, because lesson number 4, which, thank you, because I've always believed this. I've never put it to words. Crisis does not build character. It reveals it.
Well, that's true, isn't it? I think that the decisions people make under pressure are actually made long before the pressure arrives. And this kind of goes back to the signal was always there.
Yeah.
People who prepare, and let's talk about a pro boxer. It's not me walking in off the street saying this looks fun, let me try it. They are many of those fights are both both competitors are relatively equally matched, but the one who is better conditioned, has better aerobic capacity, they're going to be able to outlast the problem. And there, the problem is getting punched in the face. Well, life will punch you in the face. And so when that crisis happens, how one reacts to it speaks more about the steps they've taken before they ever got into that ring to start taking the punches than it does about how they're taking them and punching back. The training, the plan, the team that we surround ourselves with is more important before it becomes a matter of crisis. You can't paint the rocket after it's taken off. So let's get things set before we go. And usually that has a better outcome.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Now, this one threw me for a loop. Lesson number 5, because I never had an existential thought about this before. Lesson number 5, decide who you are before the phone rings.
Okay, that's give me a chance to really break that down. Mental rehearsal is not optional for anyone whose work matters. The first time you face a crisis is the wrong time to figure out who you're going to be in it. Similarly, opportunity. And I don't think I'm the only person who has weathered the storm of good times, bad times. And sometimes those bad times lead to some pretty lean times. And by that, the door knocks, you open it, and there's opportunity. Know who you are. Remember your value. Remember the things that you were doing to increase your hourly rate, to increase your marketability, to increase your value to a team if they're thinking about bringing you on. Because in those moments where perhaps you've been a little thin on the wallet or on the resources, you don't want to give yourself away for nothing, right? So that's a chance for opportunity to really take the time, think about it. The phone has rung, you're on the phone, they're interested in you. Okay, but remember who you are, right? Uh, you need to decide, okay, similarly, but on the flip side of the coin, I really need this. So even though I feel that I am worth this much more per hour, I'm going to take this because it gets me back in the game. It gets me back doing what I need to be doing. It keeps the lights on and we're eating hamburger instead of cat food. That's important, I think.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I would also kind of add that, inherently we have several different banks like in our lives, right? We've got our bank of morality, that cup of morality that should floweth over, hopefully. We've got our bank of family and work-life balance and love and self-actualization, right? And so I find that in my own self-actualization, I've been finding that now I'm measuring things against, if I take this to fill this cup, am I sacrificing and emptying a little bit of another cup? And if I take this gig because I need the money, even though I know that this goes against my moral code, what am I giving up to gain this interim thing? And that's a delicate balance, and it's different for everybody. And someone else's line in the sand may be drawn 80 yards back as opposed to the other person's line in the sand. I do think it's individual, but I think it's an exercise that needs to be done nonetheless, right? You have to figure out, what am I giving up
Absolutely.
to get
Absolutely.
this?
Absolutely.
I loved that lesson. I loved it.
Absolutely. And
Let's,
if I could just add one more thought on that,
yeah.
it's easy to say, okay, the phone's ringing and I'm in my office by myself. But a lot of times things happen, that phone rings and you're in a crowd of people, or maybe that crisis is already underway. And so it is important. And it goes back to being calm. What am I hearing? Actually process the information. If it's a problem, get the four corners of it so you know really what you're looking at. If it's an opportunity, make sure that you understand it so that you don't react prematurely or miss it entirely.
I love what you just said about, if it's a problem, getting the four corners of it. I think that is in itself an hour-long 10 lessons learned episode, talking about the fact that when you see a problem, you can't just look at it from one angle. You have to get into every nook and cranny of that problem to figure out how to solve it.
Exactly.
Words of wisdom for sure. Lesson number 6, give people a job.
Absolutely. In chaos, idle hands become problems and panicked minds become dangerous. So even a small task can restore some sense of agency and kind of stabilize the team. And if you'll indulge me, I'll tell a quick story that I think encapsulates this. When my son was 10 days old, he had some health problems, and in making this a short story, he actually died in my hands, and I resuscitated him in my kitchen. And my wife was absolutely freaking out because I was actually supposed to have been gone on military duty on a drill weekend for the Guard. But I had called, and being younger and not really understanding the Family Medical Leave Act, I'd asked my commander, geez, do you think I could sit this one out? And he's thinking, well, yeah, I mean, you're entitled. But I didn't know. So I still asked, and he said, yes, go ahead. So I was home, and that's good because my wife, as I said, absolutely panicked. But holding the boy, directing her to call 911, put it on speakerphone, and repeat everything I say to the dispatcher, gave her a sense of worth, of value. She couldn't help what was going on with my buddy, my little guy, but she could help the process. And so she calmed down. EMS showed up. He was breathing again. They said, well, he still needs to go to the hospital for full eval. It's going to be cheaper if you take him than if he rides in the ambulance. So we'll see you there, type of thing. I started to get in the car and drive because, remember at the time, I was a cop. I guess that wasn't obvious to everybody, but I was a state trooper, and we pride ourselves on actually being competent drivers. And my wife very quickly said, I'm not comfortable being in the back seat with him if something else happens. So I said, great, drive. And I sat in the back, and this is more of giving her a job. I told her the best way to get to the hospital quickly without, racing and causing more problems. And then I told her, drop us off here. I'm going in with him, and meet us at the ER station. And so that helped her to feel, I think throughout it, looking back, less traumatized by it and more like she actually contributed to his well-being. And she did. Absolutely. I'm not belittling that at all. But if there's not somebody taking charge, then the situation will usually do that for you. And it's not usually to your benefit.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. A very traumatizing story, but I love the fact that as a family unit, um, you both played your part as parents. You both said, "Okay, I know that I can do this part. I'm going to give you this part. You got to take it and you got to do it because there's a life on the line." And there were no arguments. There were no questions. I think, and you can tell me this, you've been in harrowing situations like this way more than I have. The worst thing in the world you can have somebody ask when you're in an emergency situation and somebody's stepped up to take charge and is leading is somebody to stop everything to go, but why? Like,
Well, I mean, exactly. And answering that question requires a little finesse. And certainly it is situationally dependent. If we're struggling with setting up a projector for a briefing, that's much different than when your 10-day-old son is not breathing and
right.
life is in the balance. So you're right. The why of it is, well, because that cord doesn't belong to that machine. It's much different than because he's going to die. So yeah, 100%.
Well, kudos to both of you because that was some really good fast acting.
Well, thank you. And just so everybody knows, he did survive. He is still my little guy, although he's a big kid now. He's 24. He's graduated from college, and he's working as a geologist in North Georgia.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Lesson number 7. And this one, it's very rare. Again, I see a lot of lessons. We've done over 150 episodes at 10 lessons a pop, everyone. So we've seen a lot of lessons, but man, this one really got me because I'd never seen it before. Lesson number 7, train for the day, not for the drill. I immediately got it and I was like, duh, that's amazing. But I want you to break it down, Conan.
Sure. I mean, training matters before it matters, right? Just being obvious for a second. But by the time you need the skill, it's too late to try to acquire it. So let's use that boxing analogy. Even though you are training every day, even though you are in the ring sparring with your partner, when you get to the actual fight, let's even ramp it up more. It's your first time getting a shot at the title. The nerves, the adrenaline, the anxiety. It makes it a different situation, doesn't it? And so you haven't trained for the drill, which is just to stand and practice your punches and look for weakness. You are training for that day, that moment in the sun when it really all comes down to everything you've brought to the table. And if you're short of a few tools in the tool belt, it's too late, right? I think about what I said about rising to the occasion versus falling to the level of preparation or training. And that's 100% true. And it's right back to this. We can all sit around and do a discussion about, well, what do we do if we're over budget and we're behind schedule? And we can talk about that. But if you don't actually work on it and maybe have drills in your workplace or more tabletops, bringing in the people and actually running kind of a full scale exercise before that really happens, it's too late when it is happening. When let's say a software company finds out after they've shipped the product that there's a bug in it, or a favored. I've had some clients who really their business hinges on one big customer, and something happens to that customer. What are you going to do? Right? That's keeping families fed. That's keeping the doors open. So it matters, right? Far before it actually matters, if that makes sense.
Does. And that's the reason why this particular lesson struck me, is because it's so applicable with so many different things. I took it down to like the minuscule. I took it down to, somebody who is anxiously and ferociously training and practicing for an interview, or practicing to take a test. And they're practicing for that one moment in time, which is important. It's very important, right? But if the bus that they were supposed to take to get them to the location to take the test, or have the interview, if that bus is late or doesn't show up, they're totally thrown off. They're totally thrown off. And that messes with what they were originally practicing for, right? So to me, in my mind, that was, don't just train for the one thing. Don't just focus on that one thing. You got to focus on everything that leads up to that thing, because if anything goes wrong, you now have a plan to take care of it, and you're not in chaos or panicking. And it really changed my perspective.
Well, I would agree with you. And I would say that, a perfect example in my life is the fact that I only made the dean's list one semester in law school. And so at graduation, there were many people getting academic awards, and good for them. But some of those people who were great in law school could not pass the bar.
Mm.
And, that's the whole reason you went to law school, to practice law. Then that's really not helpful, is it?
That's true. It's so true. Lesson number 8. Oh man, I love this one too. Lesson number 8. Relationships are the only currency that compounds.
100%. I mean, I feel like it speaks for itself, but in business, contracts open doors. It's the relationships that keep them open. And I would even say that sometimes it's those relationships that get you invited to even talk about the contract. This is true for me in combat. This is true in law enforcement. This is true in international law. I have people that I know from around the world that when things have gone sideways, this is not some cold call because I remember them from a LinkedIn contact. This is because we've worked together and we still maintain contact. We still maintain the relationship. We're not having backyard barbecues. I'm not at their kid's birthday, but I know their kids' names. They know mine. We know each other. And because we've had that interaction, and there is a true relationship, and I'm not just talking some passive, I'm here, you're here, but really, hey, what can I do to help you help the process so that we can all be done and go home safely if it's in combat or as a cop, or, with a little more scratch in the pocket because we finished early and we got that bonus we were all trying for. Those are the things that have helped me. And in my book, I do touch on some of those relationships that enabled me to solve problems that were pretty difficult, just simply from a logistics standpoint. And I think it's important to remember that our whole life is based on relationships or the lack thereof. And so we can invest in gold, we can invest in any kind of commodity, but the relationships we invest in enable us to get the furthest, the fastest.
I have been a relationship builder pretty much my entire life, and I already understood the importance. And I love the way you express it, and I hope that people that consume this show understand the importance of that. This is 10 lessons learned. We've been trying to give you advice so that you don't have to knock your head up against the wall the way us old hats did. We want you to be able to just go in and say, okay, somebody's already been there, done that. I'm not going to go down that path. I'm going to choose a better path. But if we could leave you with anything, and we're not even finished with these lessons yet, we've got 2 more good ones to go, but relationship building, authentic relationship building, being there for other people, and being vulnerable enough to let them be there for you. That's how you build that wealth that everybody talks about. And I'm not talking about money. That's
Couldn't
so
agree more.
powerful. So powerful. Lesson number 9. Read the room before you read the brief. Tell us about that one.
Oh, has anybody been in a room and looked around like, who do they think they're talking to? I don't ever like being the person they're referring to as not getting it, right? Being a little tone deaf to the audience. And you can say the same thing the same way in 3 different rooms and receive 3 different reactions. The reality for me has been that cultural intelligence is not a soft skill, right? It's the operating layer beneath every cross-border deal that I've done, every interagency conversation. I represent defense contractors, and so there are many different federal agencies that, each one has its own culture, and you need to be able to navigate it. But every multinational team that I've been a part of is just that. These are people from different areas of the globe, different walks of life. We think about things differently. We view things differently. We process things differently. So having that cultural intelligence allows me and has allowed me to view the differences as areas where I need to figure out, again, if you use a jigsaw puzzle as the example, where does that puzzle fit? Because it does fit. And you can force it somewhere, and maybe it works for that time, but then when you're trying to get everything done, you've set yourself up for failure. And I do think that it's important that we understand that people come from different walks of life, that people have learned things differently, that especially on a multinational team, not everybody's there to do the same job that I'm doing. Similarly, I don't have the time, interest, or inclination to learn in great detail what they're doing or what maybe you're doing. But you're there because you're supposed to be competent and professional. Great. Help me to help you to help the project.
Love it. Our final lesson number 10. Authority is not the same as judgment. Tell me about that.
Well, the person with the title is not always the person with the answer. I think we've all seen that, right? And knowing the difference between what separates a leader from a follower wearing leader's clothes is very important. And let's look at any one of the lessons that we discussed already today, where the situation went from normal or at least manageable into absolute chaos, pandemonium, that building on fire, if you will. Again, as I said, that person who finds themselves on the second floor with the fully engulfed building has been put into the project or the position or whatever situation it calls for because somebody with the title before them didn't cut it or had to leave or whatever, right? So it doesn't always mean that the person that replaces that leader, let's just use program manager for just ease of discussion. A new program manager comes in and has no idea what your team has been doing, has no idea the problems you faced over the last 3 months. Well, they have the title, don't they? They have the authority, but not necessarily the judgment, not the wherewithal to be able to optimize what the team is doing, especially if it's been suboptimal and they don't know what right looks like. How do they possibly get it back on track when they don't even know what the track is supposed to look like? Yeah. Those are the kind of things that I'm talking about. And it's important, I think, anytime, if you knew that you had to walk across a minefield, this whole field is mined and you have to get from this side to that side. But we've helped you, all right? We put little flags on top of all the mines. It might behoove you to actually look and see where those are before you just start walking. And it's amazing to me how many people don't do that to their detriment.
Unfortunately, it's not amazing to me, which is so sad. Oh, man.
Fair enough.
These lessons have been phenomenal, but I'm gonna ask you, what are you working on now and where can we find you? But I would be remiss if I didn't say, please talk to us about, we know that you're an Amazon bestselling author and you're going to talk about your new book, but we got to talk about your other passion for writing. Please talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I am the author of a series of children's books based on Princess Gumdrop. And Princess Gumdrop is a character that I made up for, well, my oldest daughter when she was little, and then have since told it to all my kids as bedtime stories. And they're good adventures. I try to put some kind of lesson in there about listening or helping or sharing. And it is also available on Amazon. But the stories are, I suppose any kid, up to about 8 years old might appreciate them. But they're really, again, I was writing it for my daughter. I was crafting these stories for my daughter, and I wanted her to get a feeling of that she can do anything, go anywhere, that life is an adventure. Bring the people you want to share those with who will also help you get back home, because Princess Gumdrop has to make peanut butter sandwiches every day for everybody in the kingdom. And you can't do that if you're not in the kitchen at the time you're supposed to be making those. and then riding around on her pink big girl bike with the white basket on the front and the little bell, ching ching. And I think that helped me just kind of what my daughter, I now have 2 grandsons, and she was asking why I had never written those down. And so that was the genesis of actually putting pen to paper and saying, okay, I'm going to memorialize these and you can hand them down. And it just made sense to publish those. That maybe other people could benefit from the lessons that Princess Gumdrop experiences in every chapter.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And so you go from Princess Gumdrop to your latest title, which is vastly different. Let's talk about that one.
It is. Yeah. It's the book is titled The Maverick's Blueprint: Crisis Leadership for an Unstable World. And the subtitle is Battle-Tested Frameworks from 25 plus years of international crisis management. That's it right there. I mentioned earlier to internalize a framework versus a checklist memorized. Why is that? Because in crises, fine motor skills go out the window, right? That's just physiological fact. Your mind is racing, blood is pumping, and being able to do big movements is sometimes all you can do. You can't do the fine. So if you think about trying to fix a watch while the world is burning down around you, that's probably not going to happen. And you can grab the watch and the tools and get out of the building. And that's what I mean by fine versus gross motor skills. Those frameworks that I talk about, one of them is the DETECT framework that I've developed, and that's more of a helping you, the practitioner, to recognize that the signal was always there because you are looking for those problems. Your team, the people that you're working with, are doing the job. If you're in the leadership position, I use a boat analogy. If we're all on the ship together, the leader, the captain of the ship, is not steering the ship, right? Somebody else can steer the ship. The captain needs to be down in the map room, plotting the course, knowing where the problems are, making a plan to get around them and still get there on time because, we're carrying perishable cargo. If you want to continue that analogy, the leader has to direct the actions and the direction itself of the rest of the team. And that's where a framework like DETECT can help to understand what does it look like when things start to go wrong and what do we do. Now, going back to the scenario where you find yourself on that second floor, the building's burning, there's another framework that I use. I call it the RAPID framework, and that is for responding to crisis when you find yourself in the middle of it and have not had the time to plan appropriately. And that's not always a failure of the leaders on the leaders' part. There have been many stakeholders for whom I have gone to work who aren't interested in spending some money before the shovels break the ground, so to speak, to really lay all those things out and understand truly what their contingency problems might be and establish an appropriate reserve. And in those cases, you can argue as much as you want. At some point, you either get relieved or you just execute smartly. And so when those things happen, it's not the time to say, I told you so, I knew this was going to go wrong. It's, you have to deal with it. And in the book, and it actually ties in pretty similar, as I said before, about those relationships kind of making things happen where they wouldn't have otherwise. The RAPID framework allowed me to solve a problem that was largely logistical in its solution, but would have been catastrophic if we could not have figured it out in a timely manner. Finally, with my PhD, I wrote, if anybody's interested, it was base erosion profit shifting in the digital markets of emerging economies in sub-Saharan Africa. And in Africa, I'm not being foolish here. I'm saying it's huge. The continent is enormous, and countries from one end to the other aren't the same, right? Even neighbors aren't the same. They do things differently. And so sometimes when you're having those negotiations and you're working, even if you're working together, we aren't necessarily empowered to bring the whole solution. We have to get approval from higher, or we just don't have the infrastructure to implement it. And so the constrained cooperation model is a framework that I developed where countries, entities, people can work together even though they don't necessarily have all the answers for their own part of the problem.
Right.
And I think that's important because it allows and fosters better teamwork and team solution solving. And those frameworks, like I said, are in the book. And this book is not written as a textbook. This book is written as a practitioner's field guide. And I think that very often people will read it and they'll say, man, I knew that. Great, good, you're ahead of the game. Others will say, okay, that's a different way to look at it. That's good too. But there is something to take away for everybody who reads the book, because if nothing else, it just reminds you of the person you've been. Get back to it, right? Get back to being the person who listens to others, reads the room, figures out where things can go wrong before it happens, and then solves the problem.
I think that is the recipe for the best communication and the best win-win situation ever. If everyone came to the table with that mindset, if everyone came to the negotiation table after reading your book, I think this would be a
Absolutely.
better world.
Absolutely.
I really do. Well, listen, I would love to thank our guest, Dr. Conan Higgins, for sharing his lessons with us today and for his service to the United States of America. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. You've been listening to 10 Lessons Learned. This episode is produced by Robert Hossery. Please tell us what you think of today's lessons. You can email us at podcast@10lessonslearned.com. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on a notification bell so you don't miss an episode of the only podcast that makes the world wiser lesson by lesson. Be safe, everyone.